Sorry, I just realized that I'm muted. Good morning, everyone. Yes. Yeah. Let's start that again. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Euro Trade. My name is Marcus D. I have been trading for 18 years and yeah, I'm in a crude oil short. So crude oil and I have been on a bit of a trial separation over the last year, but whenever we have a day where crude oil goes a little nuts, even though I wouldn't call it nuts because it only went up about 377 ticks in an entire day, and even though these days that looks like a massive move, if you roll it back like a couple of years ago, 350 ticks was actually the expected move for the session, and never mind the day. And whenever it goes crazy to the upside, I always find opportunities for mean reversion back the other way. Crude oil is a product that has a downward bias. If you take a look at many years of how it behaves whenever it does these like huge runs to the upside, there is a pretty decent opportunity to sell it back down. So just like equities have an upward bias, crude oil tends to have a downward bias. So if I go back to the weekly chart, we're sitting in an area of a previous supply, which is pretty strong. It's not exactly a swing extreme, but the next swing extreme is all the way up at 75. So 68. If I look at the options levels, that is where end of day put support was yesterday. Since then, it went into a nice mean reversion already. So what I'm looking for here is just a continuation of that move down. Now I do have a pretty aggressive target, which is kind of automatically set whenever I do my brackets. So do I expect it to go all the way down to 64? Probably not, but 65.50 is where the previous demand level is visible on the daily chart. So we'll see how this goes. I will explain more on a more granular level using the intraday stuff, what I'm seeing here. So if you focus on this chart, let's go up to the 30 minutes. So here's that end of day put support. Now these levels are usually created at the end of the day. And crude oil, for the company that I use to give me and aggregate the options levels is Mental Q. Now they only provide end of day levels for crude oil, which is absolutely fine. There's ways to kind of trick it to maybe use like USO and then get intraday levels for that particular instrument. But this tends to be good enough for me because it kind of shows you all of these levels. They might have different names, but for the most part, they tend to be pretty accurate. So maybe one day it'll be GEX2 at 67.50, and then maybe on another day it will be like a core resistance or a gamma wall. Then another day it might be still a GEX level, excuse me, but maybe it's a weak or gamma exposure level. So that's kind of how commodities operate. They're not as dynamic on most days as equities. Stacks net was there, or just use bar chart. To me, it's I use a combination of range bars. On this particular platform, we have tick chart, which is the closest thing you can come to. But here we go. So we opened up London quite high up. London value is all the way down at 65.90, not too far from that demand level on the daily chart at 65.50. Was it 64.50 or 65.50? 65.50. The first area that we need to battle is this GEX2. This is still all inside initial balance, so nothing has been decided. The size of the initial balance is pretty normal. It's 53 ticks. And if I drop down to the 15-minute chart, this is where I scaled in. So I was in with one, and then decided I was going to cut that one because I was looking for a further move down. Maybe if they just went into a massive unwinding during the initial bounce, I wanted to be in on that. And then now they've kind of settled in and around the GX2 level. That's where my scaling was. This is why I have another stop market buy here, because that's effectively a new, I'm looking at it like a new trade, right? So it's like we rejected GX2, and now I want to see what happens. So my stop for one of the orders is sitting right above where we last rejected that area. If we manage to reject it and get a little bit of fall through, the next thing to tackle will be this initial bounce low, which is located at 67.28 at the moment. And then after that, we have a couple of areas that are pretty, they might be tricky to break. If this whole thing wants to keep going higher, then I would expect to see the price reclaiming that and not being able to go any lower. But overall, I do want to give this a few tries whilst crude oil is trying to decide what to do. And I want to try and be in with 2 contracts on this mean reversion opportunity. There is a huge battle going on around here. Huge battle right now. So we'll see. If I drop down to a 5-minute chart and use my little ribbon, you can see the price action is still kind of contained inside that ribbon. It's neither going away from it nor super high. But again, if it gives me an opportunity to maybe get another contract in a bit higher, then that would improve my average, and that might be the better choice as well. So again, like I said, I want to try a couple of times here to try and get a better average overall, but I want to be in if they just decide to flush it. A little bit of buying and selling here. You know, you can see on the time and sales, some buyers are stepping in, then some sellers are stepping in, then some buyers stepping in again. So there's literally like a bit of a tug of war happening around the GX2 area. Who's gonna win? Who's gonna win? Nobody knows. But yeah, mean reversion down at least to this value for the London session at 65.91. That would be kind of a rough target, I suppose. So yeah, the only thing for me to do here is just sit and wait. I've got one idea, and we can see how we can best try and position ourselves. 46 contracts at 67.60. That's quite close, so that's not really that great. But let's kind of scan through the dome. 67, switch this off. 67 has 76 contracts there. 67.10 also has 83, and to the upside, all seems to be a bit weaker. Don't we see anything bigger than about 23? And if you hear my dogs, they are around the back of the house just barking at nothing. So yeah. And then the ones that are outside are barking at the ones that are inside. So that's what we do around here. Yeah. Certainly an interesting day today. And we'll see whether this GX2 gives way. That's the first step. If GX2 gives way, initial bounce also needs to gives way. What? And then the gamma wall. If gamma wall goes, that'll be the big boy. That'll be like, okay, we definitely can't go higher. And yeah, yesterday I did take that copper trade. I think it was like a few minutes after I ended the session with Jerome, so I was up just over $1,000, so that was good. And we'll see what happens today. Yeah, let's see who's in chat. Yes, people are freaking out. Yeah, sorry, I actually made a coffee for myself this morning, and then I promptly spilled it all over the place. So I then was rushing to kind of set all of this up and didn't manage to get another coffee. So this is why I totally forgot to actually switch on my microphone and across the board, anything that works on electricity tends to work better when it's switched on, right? So apologies about that. Nothing wrong with your side of things. It was all on me. Yeah. Rabari, there we go. So hopefully this makes a bit of sense. When something goes into a massive outlier move, on crude oil in particular, it's not a great idea to then go for yet another big day in the same direction. I've seen crude oil go 600 ticks in one direction, and then the next day it fell 700 ticks. Now, granted, this was during COVID, but tariffs and trade war might be another one of those outlier events. So the short bias still remains. I don't think that's changed all that much. Eloisa is here. Good morning, Eloisa. Very good to see you here. She says, yesterday new science class was great. Your trade was amazing. Look, it's just one trade. We can't base our performance. Whenever people are like, wow, that was a great trade. Yeah, but it's just one trade. The way I look at it after all of this time is until I have like a good sort of full month of great performance, one trade means nothing. I think as newer traders, a lot of you get too focused in on a trade by trade basis, and you kind of try and pat yourself on the back. Oh yeah, that was a great trade, but then you mess all the rest of them up. So I'm not talking about Eloisa in particular, but I'm talking about more novice traders who've been maybe at it for a few months or maybe a couple of years even. I would classify that as a new trader as well. And some people get there faster. But for the most part, we tend to be too zoomed in to that trade by trade basis and outcomes. But really, that's not the end goal. So from my point of view, one trade is great. Okay, cool. But let's see how all of this looks like in the end of June. And the reason why I'm being so skeptical is because we are in June, and that's like summertime, so we tend to see a lot of liquidity dry up, and that always means more work for me, because it means that the swings might be few and far between, and I have to start being super accurate with the timing entries, because anytime you have a range bound day, it requires precision. And so it becomes a little bit more labor intensive. Whereas swings, if you get something like this, once it does work out nicely, like you've seen the copper trade, it's a stress-free trade. You just go in, it has follow through, it just keeps going, and you're like, all right, that's great. Now, here's the thing. I actually wanted to do an RBOB trade this morning. I didn't necessarily want to do a crude oil trade, but I've just noticed that Topstep rolled the RBOB to the new contract, and I'll show you what the dome looks like. And I can't trade like that. Look at the spread. Look at how thin and patchy this dome is. And I wanted to do two contracts. This is a live account. If I wanted to do two contracts, I could be looking at a spread of about 7 ticks. And then, fills, anyone's guess what's going to happen. So until RBOB actually populates this a little bit more, I don't know why they roll RBOB so early. I do need to reach out to the team to maybe see if we can find a better way of doing this. Because, it does affect the workflow a bit. Since, other platforms have not rolled, and they're like, yes, we're in a new contract. Like, I get it, but, then we find ourselves in super low. And it happened to me once before where I entered an RBOB trade, didn't check the contract. It rolled early. And then it started wagging plus 108,000, minus 1,800. Like, it was like basically wagging around by 1,800 pounds, $1,800 up and down. And I was like, what? So obviously I freaked out, closed it, and turned out I was probably one of the 3 people that were trading the RBQ contract, or whatever it was, the equivalent, right? So yeah, that was a bit interesting. All right, Gex2 for now. Still causing trouble, but I do have initial balance flows as my next problem area. So right now, until that goes, now that we've managed to stick below Gex2 for a little bit of time, 67.28 is next on the line. Now, what happens with some of the some of the initial balance break type setups is that once they break, they sometimes whip it back up, and then again they do the same thing that they just tried to do with Gex2. If it's a true mean reversion, maybe they will just bleed down through it, but again, a little bit skeptical because we have two strong levels. We have the 24-hour ADR low just at 67.15, and then we have this gamma wall at 67. So that might be the next battlefield. All right, so it's not currently wedged in between initial balance low and Gex2. Let's have a look at the questions. Easy B, what pair are you trading? It's not a pair, this is the futures market. It's crude oil futures, outright. Go figure. Whenever we get Forex people in the building, they're like, what pair is that? It's no pairs. It's a commodity. Actually exist in the world. Imagine that. So yeah, just CL, crude oil futures. Directly from the CME. Ace 99 has a great question. Maybe the question is, are the losses great trades? It depends how you lose. Depends how you lose. I would argue that a good loss is the one where you had an idea, you had a decently sized stop loss with a decently sized position. So when I say decently sized stop loss, neither too small nor too big. So something that enables you to stay in the market for long enough in order for price to actually do something. But I would argue if you lose that kind of a trade, it was in your plan, you had a level in mind and it just broke down, I would argue, yes, that is a good loss. But I would, Ramazan, so if you're doing CFDs, it's not CLUSDs, it would be WTI USD because it's West Texas International, if you're going to nitpick. But yeah, I don't think there is such a thing as a quote CLUSD. WTI is what you're looking for if you are with dodgy CFD and Forex brokerages. But yeah, a bad loss, I would say, is the one where you chased, where you don't have a level, you were oversized, and you kept nitpicking on stops. Kept like going, oh, I'm just going to use a tiny little stop, and then you get smacked on the face. But the level is still there. Then you go in again, and you get smacked on the face again. Why? Because your stop loss is so small that you're not really allowing the price action to actually tell you what they're planning to do, right? You're just like so zoomed in. I've seen people on like 30-second charts, 15-second charts. It's like, do you want a nanosecond chart? It's like, would that help? So to me, I go the opposite way. I go larger time frames, and yes, sometimes I zoom into like a 100-tick chart, 4-bar chart as well, but not before I have that larger time frame context. And even then, maybe the scalings will be done once I have my core position, and then I'm kind of trying to build maybe a bigger position around that. That's what I use them for, but I would never run my core position. Like, for example, this scaling that I have with the stop market buy to control the downside in case it doesn't work out. We always need to be, pessimistic in that way. It's just a tiny portion of this entire position compared to the entire core position. So I'm willing to eat up, about 12, 13 ticks on a scale-in, but I'm not ready to eat up like the full sort of 50-tick stop that I've got here. That one, I can manage better, because hopefully I'll have time to take it off if everything starts bleeding. And if we go above the initial bounce high, back to put support, and then I will wait. I will wait to see what happens around the put support. But in that case, that becomes a different trade then. Then it's no longer mean reversion. Then we're looking at a failed auction, which minimizes the profit margin. It then becomes profit margin maybe into a neutral day. But just by the fact that something extends against you, extends that first hour of trading against you, that should change the hypothesis, because you can't be chasing massive trades at that point. Since the market participants, especially if they spend any time on the other side of extending the initial balance, it's a different setup then. So yeah. Eloise is saying D is very controlled. Yeah, West Texas Intermediate. Yeah, sorry. Again, lack of caffeine today. Yeah. Eloisa says D is very controlled with losses in good and direction. So in her case, losses I would consider good loss. Obviously, someone never wants to lose, but controlled losses are always good. Yeah, I mean, nobody likes losing, but I have a long-standing accuracy of 43% when we look at the last sort of 18 years of my trading, but I maintain a higher risk reward, which is why I have a positive expectancy. So I'm not really bothered by losses. I'm like, whatever. Yeah. Braz has a very good point. I'm trading M&Q, bought at 21.662, never traded this time, but I like how the NQ is moving right now. Not too slow and not too fast. Yeah, I think that people who are getting irked by NQ's fast movement during the main session might actually benefit from trading NQ outside of regular trading hours, because it is smoother, it is a lot less crazy. And it's really about your emotional control. If you can't hold the shit when like everything's flying at 1,000,000 miles an hour and you're effectively getting frustrated because you keep getting stopped out, or you keep being 100 ticks in profit on NQ and then back to zero and then minus 50, and you're like, oh man, what? You can't trade from that point of view. You have to be like zen, right? That's why we do Neuro Wednesdays with Dr. Jerome, and that's why we practice emotional control and introspection and all of that good stuff. I would argue that the emotional control is the holy grail or trading, if there is one, right? It won't be any particular level. I use some, let's say, more sophisticated levels, but they're just levels, like anything else. They might have a slightly higher relevance than some of the other levels that I see people using, purely because they're taken from the market making activity, right? I take where the market makers are positioned, and I go, okay, well, what do they want to do with this level? And at those points they have to either adjust their inventory or add more. They have to either sell at that point or buy at that point. And depending on which side they take, they either have to offload some positions, in which case you will see these levels that I have, like EOD put support, GEX2, blah, you will see them give way and then continue to give way, even though sometimes it's not an exact science. So you might be in a situation where they go through GEX2 and then they get above it, but ultimately when you look at the slightly larger time frame, like 30-minute chart, 1 hour chart, ultimately they're not able to keep the price above that level, right? In which case that would be a short, and it would be an indication that the gamma exposure level that was pretty strong, had a lot of interest, was the point where they just could not keep the price above it. That's all a part of the OODA loops, OODA loops. Observe, orient, decide, and act is what that stands for. And that's kind of how I look at things. It's like I have these like orientation points, and as the market is reaching them, I literally just observe multitude of time frames and I keep flipping between them. You probably see me doing that quite a bit. However, on my other screens, I have like 4 of them at the moment. I have 30-minute chart, 4-hour chart, 1 day. And I look at those all at the same time. They're always in front of my eyes. Doesn't mean that I'm always going to be right, and this is where the control losses are supposed to be taking your center stage to make sure you don't lose it when something doesn't work out. But I like partial losses. People like partial wins, but I also utilize partial losses based on micro time frame structures when I want to scale in. I effectively look at it as a small opportunity after I've already managed to find that main big trade. And then if I want to scale in, I will use like a 100-tick chart or a 2-minute chart, depending on what I'm trading, right? So, for example, something like copper really doesn't benefit that much from a 100-tick chart. And if I look at the 2-minute chart, you can see that there's a clear range here on a 2-minute chart. So until that range goes, there's nothing for me to do. So we're just in a range, we're chopping around, undecided, still inside the initial balance. We're below VWAP from Globex. And we're just kind of having a little battle here on GEX2 ranging. And if I look at it on a 100-tick chart, that clarity might actually stay, but it might also get lost because suddenly you have too many candles that have been formed. But it's giving you similar information. It's giving you the information that there is a range. It's just that because crude oil is not so crazy anymore these days, it's to me a little easier to kind of stay on 2-minute chart for this purposes. And now, just to make sure I don't lose my way, staring at a 2-minute chart, I have this little ribbon which is comprised of 3 9EMAs that are all set and anchored to different points. The middle one is anchored to the usual close, the high, and then the low, and that creates sort of a channel where, or ribbon, however you want to call it. I call it a ribbon. That gives me a pretty good indication of whether we are still maintaining in that range or we are breaking out, or you can even see the volumes on a 2-minute chart nicely. You can see how even they are, like they tried to sell it and they buy back up. But then the sellers kind of come in. However, the buyers collectively go into a little bit less of a crazy move. I still have my GEX2 there as an orientation point. So they're literally just chopping around. And until that goes, there is nothing for me to do. There's no clicking, there's no flipping and flopping. Want to be short, not interested in longs at these levels. Could not care less if it goes into another long, so be it. I am going to be pretty stubborn with the mean reversion idea. Not stubborn to the point that, oh, I lost once, let's get back in. No, I'm going to be stubborn to the point of, I want a short. I don't want a long. I want to be a seller here. If I'm wrong on that, so be it. I don't care, right? That's not a part of my plan today. My plan today, because I'm basing my hypotheses of we're too high up, we never managed to get above 68 during any sort of London hours for now. That can change. Anything can happen. But for now, we have not been able to get all the way back up there. Every time they try, somebody comes in and sells it. We try it, comes in and sells it. But it's still initial balance. So this is all just market maker territory. The initiative players have not stepped in yet. Initiative, I mean the big boys with bigger pockets that are not necessarily market making. They're actually looking for longer term positions. So they're usually visible when they attempt to take the price outside of that first hour of trading range, which we refer to as the initial balance. Let's see. How many screens do I use? I have 4 at the moment. But I'm finding it a bit tight, I will be honest, because obviously we have the streams, then we have, Discord, then we have, whenever I'm on the main broadcast, we have Slack as well, and it all just gets a little bit jammy, because I look at multiple products as well. I probably look at about 5 products. Actively trade probably 2 or 3 of those in any single week. But then when I'm on the main broadcast, they are very equities focused, so I have to have that as well. So it all gets a little bit like, so I'm actually thinking of maybe adding another proper screen. I do have an Elgato sort of prompter when I'm doing like my long form videos. I've taken that off right now because I haven't been doing long form videos much. And I used to use that one as like my 5th screen, like 5th mini screen. But, you know, with all the stuff that we've got going on, I might need to add another. If you're not streaming and if you're not involved in like a production and stuff, 4 might be enough. You know, it depends what you trade, how much you trade. And if you trade stocks, I would argue that would probably need more screens. But yeah. Lotus has a beautiful comment. Dee, your sessions with you and Jerome have made a huge impact in not just my trading, but my entire life. I'm grateful, beyond grateful for you both. You see, this is what we mean when we say trading and becoming more aware of your own self-limiting beliefs, becoming more introspective in your behaviors, analyzing how you're approaching a challenging situation in life. That changes you as a person. You know, we had this old school idea of traders who are, you know, back from the 90s, you know, everybody's like coked up and a little bit out of shape and, you know, crazy, and they're constantly drinking and having these like crazy lives. That was the pits, right? That was like entirely different world. And even there, not everybody was like that. Now, prop firms, I would argue, were back when I started with them. God, I'm stuttering so much. I definitely need my caffeine today. Jesus. Yeah, so I would argue that prop firms back in 2013 was still a little mix of the two. Because, you know, you did have people where you get into the office, and we usually had to start pretty early. So, you know, you'd be in the office at like 7 a.m. and then you see somebody coming out of the restrooms with like white powder on their nose, and you're like, and not a girl, by the way. So you can extrapolate what they were doing. And I would be like, really? At like 9 a.m.? Dude, what are you doing with your life? But then all of that changed, right? We had COVID, everybody became a hermit, and everyone became a day trader as well. And suddenly we had this new breed of people who are trading 0 DTEs in their PJs. And we're all alone, right? You sit at home and you're like, I've got no one to talk to. You know, people frequently ask me, Dee, you know, you have your businesses, you have a whole bunch of stuff. Like, why are you with Topstep? Because this gets lonely. And, you know, I do miss the camaraderie of having colleagues around. And, you know, I also suffer from a chronic illness, which severely limits my ability to socialize. So my Topstep family has been there for me for like 10 years. I'm very good friends with Hogue. I have been with Topstep in one way or another for 10 years. And when they were making TopstepTV, I was like, yeah, man, of course, I'll love to be a guest. And then, you know, we decided that we're going to take it a step further. And here we are. And I absolutely love being on with all of my colleagues, Coach Jay, Anne Marie, Coach Robert, Hogue, JD. Like, everybody is so knowledgeable, and it really is like stepping into a real prop firm in office and just being a fly on the wall with all the crazy conversations that are happening. That to me is worth everything, right? It's an environment where I can totally nerd out over the stuff that I'm very passionate about, like trading and data. And, you know, going really granular with your analysis, using all these fancy tools. Because, you know, sometimes as a coach, it's a different relationship. I love coaching people because it means that you help people and suddenly they go from, you know, spinning their wheels to suddenly going, oh my God, I just took my first payout. best feeling ever. But when it comes to sort of like experts talking to other experts, there is no replacement like talking to someone who's your equal, and then, you know, just finding out something new, finding a new way of looking at things, or, you know, nerding out to the point that you lose everybody else in the room, and it's just, you know, Anne Marie and myself talking about data and stats, and how many times we've seen this play out and how well it works. But, you know, to me, that is what life is about. Might seem pathetic to some people, but to me, this is the dream. So, yeah. And I love this so much that I don't care if, you know, you're doing well or markets are being a bit crap or whatever. I love this. It's what I've wanted to do. Like, I remember doing an interview when I was still a musician, and they were like, if you weren't a musician, what would you be? And I decided to say, now at that point I wasn't trading. This was probably like maybe 2002, 2003. I wasn't trading. And I said, well, you know, I'm quite intrigued by the whole markets. And I'm, you know, I don't know, maybe in another life I would have been a trader. And they're like, really? And to me, that was like such a far-fetched idea, because I did music university. I play multiple instruments. Since I was 4 years old, I've been doing music and sports. That was like my two things. So for me to go from that and not being particularly good at math purely because I just wasn't interested in it, and bizarrely I was good at physics, but not applied math, fine. Pure numbers, I was like, nah. So naturally that manifested the same way in grades. But yeah, so when I decided to go into trading, it was much more similar to music skills than I imagined. And that to me was a very welcome revelation, I suppose. Because I went from thinking it's all just math and equations, and I'm like, I don't want to do that, to, oh, it's pattern matching and data science. That's different. That is applied math. I actually really love that. So let's see if we can, you know, make this work. And then I got completely obsessed. I was journaling every day. I was like, there were times when I would spend 12 hours staring at the markets, not trading, but just like kind of tracking what's happening at what point of the day, how that looked, then learning how to read candlestick patterns in real time at a very fast pace. So I had the one of the backtesting softwares back in the day. This was like 2007. It was a while ago, okay? So I was like, let me see if I can approach this the same way that I approach a tough phrase in my instruments, right? Because when you have a technically challenging phrase, musical phrase, of course, you go down in tempo and you play it painfully slow until every single note is crystal clear. Then you bump it up by like 1 BPM. Then you repeat, and then you do the same. Maybe you can bump it up by like 5 or 10 on the very slow BPMs, beats per minute. But then once you get to faster tempo, I would literally just bump it up by 1. And that trains your muscle memory to work at a higher speed. And I used to do that as a musician since however long, like since I can remember, really. And then I applied that same approach in trading. Any new skill, if I found it difficult to follow it in real time, what I would do, I would go into the backtesting software and then play back in real time how the day was. And I would like go back in time for the day, not like yesterday, not something that's fresh in your mind, but the day that you just knew nothing about. And you would put all your levels there, and then I started off very slowly. This is something that you might want to do for NASDAQ, for example, to train your brain to operate at higher processing speeds. And then the aim is to make that, eventually to make that playback play even faster than real time, so that once you get to the real markets, it seems like it's in slow motion. Now, I've noticed with myself, I used to be very good at fast-paced price action, But I did get into my 40s. You know, I do suffer from some brain fog every so often. And, you know, aging is something we can't entirely get away from. But I've noticed that I've gotten less able to do that. Now, to me, that just means that, you know, there's a natural aging process that is happening. That's absolutely fine. But I needed to adapt. I needed to go maybe away from some of the very super high-paced instruments, because I used to trade NQ like 5 years ago, right? I can't do that anymore. It really irks me, and every time it does, it's like spaz, sort of NASDAQ zoomies. I'm like, and even now when I look at it, I'm just like, that's so annoying. Like, you just look at the price action, you're not even in a trade, and you just looking at NASDAQ and going, why are you so annoying? Like, I also have on my other platform the spread, difference between spread and ask on the chart, and it's like, it just literally looks like it's seizing constantly. So now, after 18 years of doing this, after getting into my middle 40s, and I can't do that anymore. So I gravitate towards products that will, almost like watching paint dry. If you are interested in what that looks like, look at my copper trade yesterday. That's like the prime example of a trade that I'm super comfortable with. It's going in one direction, slowly, with follow through, no drama, and you're still making money. That is where I'm at right now. Watching paint dry and still making money. Anne-Marie says I'm still obsessed. I think we're all still obsessed. I think we get bit by the trading bug, and it is addictive. It's so addictive. It's not just the money necessarily. It is, of course, it is the money as well, but it's also the fact that you have to play detective every day. Like, your brain has to work pretty hard to figure out what's going on, and I think that brings neuroplasticity into you know, constant overdrive and constant modification. And you know, I see people like Jim Dalton, who's like in his 80s now, isn't he? He's like 83 or something. His brain still works like, you know, somebody like 40 years younger. It's insane. Or maybe even 50 years younger. It's crazy. So, you know, when he talks, there's not much stuttering. He just gives you a full sentence. Now, you tell me, how many 80-plus-year-olds do you know they can do that? So I think there's like a neuroprotective side of trading. If you keep using your brain in that way, it will maybe protect you from some horrible, nasty old age diseases that many people suffer these days. So I'm looking forward to maybe, you know, hopefully getting to my 80s and still being able to explain, it's going to be like Granny D. Hello, welcome to Eurotrade. I'm going to be trading corn because corn, if you don't know, is notoriously slow. So I guess that's going to be my market. Yeah, see, interestingly, Anne-Marie, I hate puzzles. I like challenges, but I hate puzzles. Puzzles, like, you know, every time. So for example, my sister, she's in chat. She loves puzzles. She's like, she likes doing those. What do you call them? They're do I even know how to say that in English? They're Sandy, help me out. Now I can't remember what they're called in Serbian either. Damn. You know, the things that you bought me for my birthday and I wanted to like throw it in your face. The pictures in little, but yeah, they are puzzles. They are puzzles. Yeah. So you have like 5,000 pieces and like put together. Those I can't stand. I don't know whether it's maybe too arts and crafts for me, because I like challenges that are more analytical. Oscar says, good morning. The voice is very weak. I am actually reading minus 15 decibels over here, so I don't think so. If you've got volumes, I can't push it further into the mic because it's going to start distorting. And minus 15 decibels is actually the normal RMS that any speech should be. So, yeah. Have I tried? Sure. Oh, jigsaws. That's the one. That's the word. Thank you, Anne-Marie. Jigsaw. Yeah. Puzzles. Jigsaw. This is where you see that I'm not necessarily native English speaker. But yeah. Have you tried shooting? So yes, I don't like guns, but I have tried shooting because it was civil wars, and you never know, right? I did have a friend, so I went to the shooting range and stuff, and I shot a couple of things in my life. Do I like it? No. Would I kind of consider that a sport? Yes, it definitely takes a lot of skill. Do I agree that everybody should have access to guns? Absolutely effing not. I think, so here's the thing. I had a friend who worked in special forces, and I asked him, should I get a gun? Because we were living in a country that was very tricky, and people were, it was a very difficult global country situation, right? So we had civil wars, a lot of like mafia going around, just executing people. We had police raids coming to our gigs. This was all back in 1990s in former Yugoslavia, right? And I asked my friend, I was like, dude, like, I'm a bit worried, what if something happens? Wouldn't it be better to have a gun? And he goes, listen, I don't think so. Because he said, with the gun, you should have the training that comes with it. If you don't have training, it is very likely that by the time you recognize a situation where you're supposed to use a gun, it will be too late. And if it's something like you misreading the situation and using your gun, that is quite possibly the worst outcome ever, right? So I thought about it and I was like, yeah, it's probably right. So if I do anything, you can go to a shooting range and stuff, but no, I don't like guns, don't want to see them, don't want them around me. Totally not into that whole thing. It's probably because I grew up in a country where guns were not used for fun, but for actually hurting people. And I just don't see that as a fun activity. It actually reminds me of a very dark place in my life. Anne-Marie says your friend is actually correct. Exactly correct. I train at a gun range. Yeah, that's where we should train. But we see people who are like, oh, I'm just gonna go outside and shoot some stuff. It's like, okay, and they're like, let's have some fun, and I'm like, that's not fun. Like, that's quite dangerous. Archery is fun. Yeah, I would probably be more in favor of archery than actual guns. Because, by the time that you tension it up and stuff, it's very difficult to kind of just go, oops. Yeah, wooden bow, not a compound one. I had a friend who was a former Yugoslavian, actually Sandy, she was your friend, Slađana. You probably still see her, actually. She was like the top, was it like the top 5 people in the country? Champion in archery, which was pretty cool, and she had like the whole fancy thing and everything. So yeah. Bruno says I like katanas. My dad had a katana on the wall. I think, I don't know why, just a random thing that he picked up over the years. Right, we're still waiting. This is how you sit and wait. We have an orientation point. We have a range. We wait for the break of the range, because I am playing the range here. It's too dangerous. Mayday mishap. Most people don't like guns. They like the sense of safety that comes with them. See, I would argue that sense of safety is misplaced. Because I feel that guns introduce danger. They don't make you safer. And no matter how safe you think you are, there's always accidents. There's always horrendous stories that we hear of, isolated cases of children finding the key to the gun cabinet, having a little play, and then, oops, the brother is dead. Oh no. So, things like that. Why do you want to put your family ever in that situation? If you want to do guns, do it like Marie does. She goes to the, the shooting range, and everybody's safe, right? Just don't bring it into a house. Because again, over in the UK, it's actually illegal to kill people when they enter your home, even if they're robbing you. You can beat the crap out of them if you can, but actually killing them, that is actually an offense, and you would go to prison. So it's a very different world over here. UK is almost completely gun-free. Even if we have police officers, they will be walking around, like the bobbies usually walk around with batons and stuff. They walk around with tasers, and there's only like, I think the army is allowed to have them, but only in very specific cases. Not like, I'm just going to be walking around town with, a massive gun. It's a very, very different world. When I was growing up in Belgrade, we didn't have those laws. So you would have any old idiot strapping a gun to his jeans and like walking around. And then obviously that changed because they were like, there's so many people with guns. Now the problem with Serbia is that we do have compulsory army, or we used to. I don't know if that's still the case. I've not been there for a very long time. But it was compulsory army for everybody who was between the ages of 18 to 66, right? So most people had guns because they were like military reserve. That's very different. However, those same people were still walking around with guns strapped to their jeans before the laws came in that you actually have to have a license and a license to carry. It's like not just any old thing. Oh, I've been to the army, so therefore I can have a gun. No, you can keep it at home until you're called for duty, but otherwise you're not allowed to walk around with it. Just like going to the pub. Like that would be like Mad Max style to me, like that kind of a world. Animals, this is the thing. They can shoot me, but I can't. They can't shoot you because usually the people who are robbing places, they will usually rob them in the UK with like knives and stuff. It's very difficult to get a hold of an actual gun. That's why we have problems with gangs who are going around stabbing people in London. Also one of the good reasons to get out of there. We had an incident, I think it was 2 years ago, and when I lived in London, I lived in a very good area. Like it's an area where you could have easily walked around at like 2 a.m. in the morning and nobody is touching you. It's like so safe. Suddenly we had broad daylight. We had a lot of stabbings happening every single day. And then we suddenly had police cordoned off roads. And I was like, what the hell's going on here? Like, well, was there an accident or something? And then it came out that there was a group of young men who confronted a family guy coming back from work. He got argumentative with them and they stabbed him in broad daylight. It was like 2 p.m., 1 p.m. Like literally, it was like, as you kind of come out to the main road where my old house was, it was literally like 2 minutes down the road. And I was like, my God, this is not good. So now we live out in the sticks. We have one neighbor, nothing but farms all the way around. No footpath. You have to drive everywhere to get to any sort of semblance of civilization. I do have a little village about just like a mile down the road. But then a mile that way, it's probably like another sort of farm, and then maybe you hit a more populated area, but it's very, very rural, so it's very nice. London has more stabbings of any place in Europe. Yeah, it's sad. Mayday mishap. Did you know one of the biggest mass bad stabbing was done with a knife? I don't think there is a gun incident that had a higher count. Yeah, exactly. It was in China. Had a higher count. Yeah, I can believe that. I mean, knives can do a lot of damage. There was some idiot walking around with a machete here not too long ago. I think it was a few months back, just kind of waving things around. I think he escaped like one of those mental institutions, so perhaps he wasn't all there. You know, maybe he went off his meds or something. But yeah, you do have crazy people, and you know, the bigger the city, the more likelihood that there will be more of them. In London, everybody's super unfriendly. I actually have to change my thinking over here, because in the country, you're walking through the supermarket and people are like, hello, or you comment on, like, for example, I was buying hand wash, and me and my husband were discussing, like, oh, which Carrix to get, like, oh, the purple one is quite good, oh, this one is very drying. And then there was this one with, like, it says love hearts on it. I suppose it smells like love hearts, and it was very cute. And the random dude that was sitting there, that was just shopping next to us, he was like, oh yeah, that one's a very good one, yeah, I really like that one, I highly suggest highly recommend it. And we were like, okay, thanks. In London, if somebody does that to you in a supermarket, you will be like, get away from me, serial killer, don't talk to me, I don't want to know you. So yeah, I do have to like let go of some of my big city mentality over here. And everyone's super friendly. It's so. I went into a shop yesterday, just like to get like some. What was I getting? Yeah, I was getting like some painkillers or whatever, and then I saw the same girl in another shop, because I kind of did a little shopping trip, and it's all very close here, and she was like, oh hi, it's like the girl that worked at the till. In London, you see somebody who works at the till, and they're like, I don't know you. You're one of a million people that I see every day. I don't want to talk to you. It's after 5. Go away. And over here. So yeah, very, very different. Oscar says the best place to live in Europe is Catalonia or Barcelona. Let me guess. Are you from Catalonia? I do like Barcelona. We do go to Spain every so often. We actually considered buying a place in Spain. Before I could just rent, and it was, it was easy. All right, reaching that initial balance low now. Let's see what they do. So this is the second problematic area. Smash through the initial balance. Okay, so we have some other time from participants arriving to the party. Question is, do we sustain below initial balance into the next 30 minutes? That is the question. Let's move this over here. Yeah, if this ends with excess and stuff, I might have to wait till NYMEX then. Maybe grab a few and then wait for more. Oscar says, I'm from a small village near Tarragona. Okay. Yeah. Lido says, I have bad social anxiety, so I hate talking to anyone. See, I used to be pretty open and extroverted when I was younger. I could talk to anybody. But in recent years, I think I've become a bit of a weirdo. I don't know what's happened to me, but I tend to like not talk to people if I don't know them until they talk to me. And then I have a really nice conversation, but I would not actually go up to a stranger and just go, hey, I'm Dee, how are you? Or I don't know, maybe that's just the Londoner in me. Because I spend loads of time in London. In fact, I probably spent more, if not at least equal amount of time that I've spent in Belgrade in London. Anne Marie says, I love the way Dee trades, so controlled. Oh my God, thank you. I mean, sometimes, right? I seem to have pretty good grasp of things. Sometimes when the levels are a bit muddled, I do lose it. I was like, I don't know what I'm looking at. And then I usually go, Anne Marie, what do you see here? It's like, what can you tell me about this chart? And it helps because then you give your different perspective. And I'm like, yeah, actually, that's a good way to look at that. So I do like having a nice perspective from colleagues, especially the ones that I, respect endlessly. And on Topstep, thank goodness, we've got a ton of people who are so skilled. All right, let's not smash. Are we going into a mean reversion finally, boys and girls? Come on. What is happening? Now, again, the big area here is that gamma wall. Gamma wall. So if we can't break that, that's going to be the end. Nothing to do here now. So my trade here is just about reaching, not even at 1 hour. So I really need to just let it do its thing. ADR low and a gamma wall. If they break that, then everything, I can like breathe a bit better. But this is good. Initial balance lower in the direction of my trade is good. Anne-Marie says, I find that very hard also when I try to step out and introduce myself, that I'm perceived as monstrously awkward. Yeah. I can get awkward in social situations. Because we do this job, people would presume that we're equally outgoing socially. There's nothing further from the truth. This is like the ultimate introvert job. Talking to yourself in a room. Brilliant. But when there's like other people around, you're just like, oh God. And it saps my energy as well, especially if I don't know them. It just exhausts me to the point that I have to like rest for 2 weeks after any social event. But I'm okay talking to people once we get going. It's just that like first step. It's like, oh no. And then with me, I find it very odd that when I start talking to strangers, I don't know what it is, but they start giving me their life story. And I don't know whether it's because I'm not talking, so they kind of start opening up with something, and then they ask me some question, and I have some pretty strong opinions of some things that I'm not afraid to voice if asked. No, I don't like put, like, for example, I'm somebody who is in their 40s, decided not to have children. I adore animals, love other people's kids, but I never wanted my own. And when they ask me, when they hear that I'm in my 40s, they're like, oh yeah, but what about your kids? And I was like, oh, I don't have any. And they're like, you don't have children? So now I'm at a point where I'm old enough for them to be like, we probably shouldn't ask whether it's like biological or whether it was a choice. But when I was younger, it was always like, you should definitely have children. And I'm like, how is that any of your business? And then I would voice that. And I said, look, my sister had 2 kids. There's loads of kids around me. Like, frankly, it's my decision, And they're like, yes, but you will regret it. And I was like, yeah, still, if I regret it, it's my life, right? What is it to you? I've just met you. It's like, shut up. And they don't like that. So then they will try to persuade me how great it is. And I was like, I'm sure it's great for you. I'm a bit weird. So I have 8 dogs, though, so it's all good. I don't feel like I'm missing out. Don't worry. I'll be okay. But yeah, and then they're like, oh, how dare you say things to me? And I'm like, well, I'm sorry, you asked. Like, you're the one being nosy here, not me. I didn't ask you, oh, why did you decide to have children? It's like, so there's like a huge double standard with certain topics, especially with like women. But yeah, I'm like, just live and let live, man. You do you, I'll do me. It's everybody, as long as everybody's happy. Oh, look at that. Oh, bastards. Look at that. Close to the gamma wall. And they're like, we need to adjust some inventory. As long as they stay underneath this initial balance, it should be okay. Let's trim 1, though, because I don't like that. So we're going to trim 1, leave the rest. Okay, maybe tighten up this risk now, because we do have the initial balance high. Okay. That was it. You see that move that just happened? That was inventory adjustment, right? That's what it looks like. It's never like, yeah, we're just going up to this level. They're like, whoa, sell it, buy it. Market makers, eh? I think Mayday Mishap says, I think in the US now it's more shocking if you have children. Yeah, I can believe that. Most of the world is depopulating, I think. Yeah. Oscar says, I have a hard time understanding English, but with you I stay attentive, enjoying the way you speak. Thank you. I'm fumbling my words a little bit today because I had less of my caffeine allowance for the day since I spilled my my coffee and didn't have time to make another one. So yeah. Anne-Marie says, parents are the bones children sharpen their teeth on. Very, very true. Yeah. Yeah, Sandy, me, complete introvert, and I work in a retail shop. Yeah. Yeah, actually, Sandy, how does that work? Like, I mean, you can talk to, I know you don't look at people, but I know that you talk to them, so I suppose that's your way of dealing with it. Mayday Mishap says, I tried streaming, it was so draining for me, I gave up after like a week. Yeah. Oscar says, what are you doing this area partial close? Yeah, so I was waiting for a bit of a reaction. The partial close did give me an opportunity to cover my little attempt from earlier. And I may not be adding here unless I see that this 67 goes again, but I'm perfectly happy staying in with only one here until we get a little bit more clarity. And then if I just get, you know, another 360 out of this, that's okay. It's not time for mean reversion. We might get it later on in the day, but maybe London is not the session where they're going to start the proper mean reversion. They certainly gave it a good go here. So we have a 9 EMA on this minuscule 2-minute chart sloping downwards. But yeah, it's ADR low and a gamma wall. So this is definitely a danger zone for further downside. If we can crack that, like I said, I can relax and then this can go on for another few hours. But we first need to battle yet another danger zone. If you remember 80s movies, there was a Top Gun soundtrack, wasn't it? Danger Zone. If I'm not wrong. Am I wrong? Is it Danger Zone? It is. What were the lyrics for that? That, like, I know I'm such an 80s kid, but that soundtrack was so good. Yeah. Kenny Loggins, of course. Everybody was in love with Kenny Loggins. Sorry, took a turn there. Apologies. Let's go back to this 30-minute chart. We've got 18 minutes until they decide whether they're going to stick below this ADR low and or gamma wall. So at this point, you can be hopeful, okay? This is where I think people get, and where I'm completely the opposite to a lot of people that I'm at. I now get hopeful because I'm like, okay, well, I covered some of my position. I'm 38 ticks in profit. And, you know, if we do manage to stay below the initial balance and we get a little bit more volume, this has a pretty decent chance of going lower. So this is the point where I start to relax in a trade. Whereas I think a lot of people start getting anxious. And to me, that never made sense. So I naturally have this like, phew, okay, we're in profit. And yet people be like, we're in profit. Should I take it? Should I take it? It's like, breathe. It'll be okay. Just breathe. Eat a ham sandwich, like Hogue says. And now I just wait for the next 30-minute TPO close because I want to see where they will end it. Like, is it going to be below initial balance? Is it going to be below the ADR? Is it going to be below gamma? Is it going to be above it? Like, you know, all of that gives me a pretty clear idea of what should happen next in a trade, purely based on where we are, chart location, how they're behaving at these levels, And I'm literally just looking for a continuation here. I mean, this could be a pretty good trade if we manage to break through gamma wall. But I don't care how much money in the end I'm going to make today, or if I make any at all. I couldn't care less. I care more about my analysis being correct and accurate, and then, or being partially correct and me managing to bail before I lose out on all profits and stuff. But if my trade is just sitting at 1R, to me that's still a losing trade, believe it or not, because it doesn't do anything for my stats going forward, given the fact that I only have 43% accuracy and that I do look for swing trades on most occasions. I need to see this at least at 2R, which at this point is sitting around 66.54, let's say 55. Until I get there, this is still like almost like a break-even trade for me. 40 ticks in profit, meh, does absolutely nothing for the P&L curve when you aggregate the data that has a lot more chaos in it, so more sample size. Yes, hit the like button, guys. If you like my ramblings, if you like my analysis that is a lot less rambly than some of my other topics, yeah, show the love. Show the love. Hit the like button. I see Baby Yoda. Yes, last week, yeah, when we were on, for some strange reason, I came on and I had a whole bunch of weirdness with my camera, remember? I came on and it had this like crazy effect, as if I'm like in an 80s video or something. It had like different colors and me in like different points, and I'm like, what is going on here? No, we didn't have a scheduled power cut beforehand, so maybe, I don't know, maybe the spike did something weird. And I tried to get it back, so I kept going behind and, messing around with the camera. And finally got it to work, but then it was blurry. So I was like, what? And halfway through our lunchbox trading, I noticed that it was focusing on the bloody Yoda in the background of Grogu. I have it on my window. It's over there. So I'm glad today we're focusing on me. Grogu, stay in the background, please. Anne-Marie says, great point. My accuracy is higher, but I wish I held longer. So you see, to me, it's like a seesaw. It's like an option 1, option 2. It's either higher accuracy and lower risk reward, or, higher accuracy, lower risk reward, or higher accuracy, or lower. Let's start that again, shall we? Lower accuracy, higher risk reward. Higher accuracy, lower risk reward. Both are equal, right? Both are profitable systems. The issue with some of the younger traders is, or more novice traders, I don't mean like young by age, but more novice, is the high accuracy and low risk reward. That tends to be unstable because it's more prone to mistakes. That's the only problem I have with it. When I see somebody who's like, oh, I've been trading for 6 months and I'm aiming for over 70% accuracy. Okay, what is your accuracy now? 33%. That's the problem I have with, right? It's like your long-term accuracy over the last 100 trades is telling a very different story, or 1,000 trades if there's an ultra scalper. And that would be like, how long did you take to get 1,000 trades? 1 week. So here's a reminder, whenever you are looking for the sample size of relevant sample size for finding your edge, time is a huge component of that. If you've only done 1 week's worth of trading and you already have 1,000 trades, that's not enough time. It's enough trades, but it's not enough time. So it's an equation with like 2 parts to it. One is the number of trades, sample size. The other one is how much time did it take to get there. Why? Because we want to base our sample sizes on various market states, not just in 1 week, because market states change. You go to high volatility, low volatility, medium volatility, completely dead markets, insane markets, Trump tariffs, right? Very, very different states. So if you've not tested your edge throughout all of those, which are not going to happen in a week, right? They're probably not even going to happen in a single year. But you have a better chance of knowing where your edge is if you've had a sample size that is a year long and then however many trades that is for you. That is a better indication of your edge. But what I'm seeing constantly, every time I force somebody to go over the 2 days or 1 week of a combine eval sort of stats, suddenly a very different picture starts to arise. Because if we take all the blown combines or the bad stuff, you don't have, like a lot of people that I work with, like as a coach, you don't have 70% accuracy, and yet your negative risk reward is killing you. Because really, take all the good times and bad times and you will find something completely different. If you can maintain medium accuracy, like let's say 65%, 60%, but then you're aiming for 1.3 or 1.5 R, not like crazy, 3 to 5 Rs that I like to do, that would be a pretty stable system. Much more than like the extremes of both. You have extremes, 20% accurate, million R. Or the other side, 85, 90% accurate, 0.5 R. Both profitable, but which one has a greater margin of error? Think about that. Yeah, Anne-Maria says, PPI is this morning, and if the hedges have it the wrong way, we will squeeze north. So make sure you set alerts for the time coming. Yeah, I will be likely out of this by then, because that's like hours away. Yeah, that's 1:30 my time. We're coming up to 10 to 11. So yeah, we'll see. Darth Buddha, very good. It's okay to be wrong, just don't stay wrong. I like that saying. Oscar also says, when do you close the day? Do you have a zone or a maximum amount? What do you base your closing time on? Just the settlement, but also depending on whether I already had like a good big trade or not. So yesterday I actually closed my day out right after it came off the stream. I was actually still chatting to Jerome. We like to have a little chit chat after. And I said to him, you know what? I'm over $1,000 already. I think I'm done. Like, I'm not going to trade CPI. And copper did a huge unwinding move ahead of it. So what? Now I'm going to lose my eyes and potentially lose the $1,000? No thanks. So I actually closed it really, really early. I don't decide to end my day on anything else apart from whether I've had a profitable trade or whether I already did 5 trades per day. If I've done 5 trades per day, I'm nowhere near up on the day. It's time to walk away. So to me, it's more like the outcomes of trades. And it's not like, oh, I did a 3R trade, therefore now I can trade more. No, I did a 3R trade. I scored a home run. I made my money. I'm going to run for the hills. I'm going to go out, walk my dogs. I'm going to go and veg out on my new massive Super King bed. So we bought a new Sony TV. We're still waiting for the sofas to arrive. That's not going to be until August. But yeah, everything is like super comfortable. There's a lot of space for all the dogs to be on top of the bed, and it's just absolutely amazing. The sofa that I have right now, not as comfy. But yesterday I finished my day, and then I went to bed, watched TopstepTV from bed, and then I started watching Foundation. And it was just like a really nice, relaxing day. I then went grocery shopping. Just super relaxing, I've already made some money for the day. And I'm like, why would I, sit there and continue to ruin that? Because at the end of the day, we want to get paid. At the end of the day, this is not about more trades. It's about, are we up money? Are we down money? And, I don't know. Maybe I'm weird that way. Darth Buddha says, I'm thinking of using my first Topstep payout in some education. Just need to find a good mentor. Madman says, hey, Deeyana, in capitals. Why shouting? Do I coach? Yes, I do coach. I have a website. I'm very selective, and I only take, but when it comes to me personally coaching, we obviously have the VIP coaching through Topstep, which is a group coaching situation. In my private coaching, I take on literally these days, just like 7 people per year. That's it. There are, courses with a coaching component that you can buy. That's the Silver Plus Pro Development Program, which is CPD certified. But it's not like one-on-one. It's a forum thread. I will not be doing, and I also have somebody who helps me in this. It's not always me. But basically, you can ask things about trade setups, lecture concepts. You can even give like real-time examples, but you can't look for trade feedback because that's like more personalized. I can't give trade feedback to somebody that I know nothing about, right? People are very different. But yeah, I do coaching. So that's actually what I did quite a lot before Topstep and before getting sick. So. And now I'm here when we are having the ability to coach 50 people all at once per coach rather than just 1 or 2. Coaching is exhausting. Yeah, one-on-one, it takes a lot of energy. The way I do one-on-one coaching is that we still do it through a forum, but it's literally like you post your plan, you post your ideas and your high posts, then I give feedback on it. And then throughout the day, I keep track of any new posts and any new trades that you're doing. Once you're in a trade, it will be a very active discussion to see what the quality of the setup is. Did your execution do well? Did you put your stop away from certain areas where you might just be asking to get stopped out? So yeah, it's quite labor intensive, mentally. I remember having this one student who had a bit of a gambling problem, I think, and it was super exhausting, like so exhausting. It was him doing like 20 trades in the space of 5 minutes, and I would be like, stop, what are you doing? And all of my energy, every time I would see his post, my blood pressure would go up. So I'm like, I'm now having to take meds to control my because I get annoyed. I'm like, dude, you have so much potential and you're doing this stupid stuff. It's like, come on, you can do so much better. Please just let go of the mouse. Put down the mouse and pick up a pair of free weights instead. Anything just to get you away from clicking the buttons all the time. So yeah, it can be emotionally draining as well, because we are in it with you, right? We're like, come on, you can do this. We're trying to correct things. The way, I see some coaching is not done that way. They just are like, they call it mentorships, but they just really run Discord rooms and they're like, there you go. This is my trade. And I'm like, how did you get to that trade? And then they explain their trade. That's not the point of coaching. The point of coaching for me is to enable the trader to develop their own skills to find their trades, not to take mine. Like mine are just there once you know the concept. It's like, oh yeah, I have that same thing. Yeah, cool. But you need to have other hypos as well that I might not have that day. Maybe you're thinking, well, ADR low bounce, we have an uptrend. We are, up on the higher time frames. Maybe this is a failed auction opportunity for someone, But I'm not looking for that. I'm just going, no, actually, I'm going to be short here. We can both be wrong and we can both be right, D was the scalper. I don't think he was anything, to be honest. I think he was just clicking buttons. Just letting the fight or flight take over, and, one trade wouldn't work out. And the thing is, he would submit stellar plans, like all the level, value low, rejection. Reversion up to value low. Or in a case of a neutral day, we go into range bound. So I'm like, yeah, that's a good plan. And then he goes, I'm long. And I'm like, but it's not a mean reversion yet. I'm front running it. And then he's wrong because it goes down. I'm short now. And I'm like, we're still inside the initial balance and it's probably a neutral day. You're shorting in the middle of the initial balance. Worst, but now, okay, I'm out. I'm in again. I was like, slow down, please. And then after about, I don't know, at one point he did 100 trades in the space of an hour. blew all the accounts, everything. And I begged him throughout that whole thing. I was like, please stop. It's time to stop. It's enough. Come on. You can do this. Please stop. No, just kept going. And at the end, there was a 2-hour break. And then he comes back, he goes, all the accounts are gone. And I'm like, don't do that to me. I had to recover after that. I was like, Thomas Kane is asking, what vaccine issues did you receive from COVID? So I had 2 things. So I actually had my initial problems because I went through the first strain of COVID au naturel. It destroyed my ability to digest protein. So it did something to my GI tract. So now, even though I've up to that point, I ate beef, chicken, like all the normal animal proteins for all of my life, for 40 years, now I am intolerant to most animal proteins. I can still eat duck and seafood and stuff, so I'm not that limited. There are people who suffer a lot more with that. So that had nothing to do with the vaccine, because the vaccines didn't exist at that point. But then when they came out, my first 2 dosages were fine. The third one was done, I think, a little bit too soon, which is why I had issues, and it unfortunately reactivated shingles. That's a chickenpox virus. If you ever had chickenpox as a child, everybody did back in the day. So did I when I was 12. It can reactivate at times when your body feels like it's under threat or under stress. And in my case, there was nothing else to activate apart from the chickenpox, and it decided to explode. So yeah, doctors didn't believe me. They wouldn't see you. They didn't basically give me any meds or anything. And I was left with shingles for probably about 2 weeks before they were like, it's not an allergy. And then finally, I ended up with myalgic encephalomyelitis, which is considered chronic fatigue syndrome, but it's actually a full dysautonomic function of the central nervous system. So therefore, I got some very weird stuff going on, and I'm still trying to heal from that. I'm, exploring some new avenues at the moment, which are working. So fingers crossed. But yeah, I've been better. If you saw me 2.5 years ago, I was like housebound and bedbound. I could get up to just about go to the bathroom, and then I would just collapse, and that was all I could do in a day. That was about the time when I stopped doing my daily lives. Some days I would still force myself. I would get like jacked up on like energy drinks and everything, and then I'd be like, right, let's do the stream. And then I would be looking like death and like trying to do the streaming. And people are like, you don't look well. I was like, yeah, no shit. I know. But yeah, and then after a while, I was just like, I have to stop. I'm just not well. And and then I found some protocols that I started taking, and it was like at one point I was taking like 20 different pills in a day. But then as time went on, I sort of discarded the ones that I felt weren't doing much for me, kept the ones that were, and in the end, I hope it all works out. I'm still on a couple of medications, knock on wood, still going okay. I'm still not healthy. I can't exercise and stuff, but I'm functional. I'm here. I can do my job. Still largely housebound. If I get out of the house to do shopping, I do have to like rest for the half a day after. But it used to be like a week, right? I would go shopping, then I would crash. So that got better. But yeah, it's a difficult disease. It's very poorly researched, so the doctors don't even know what to do with you. So it's all like fringe science and research. But we'll get there. I'm a strong person. If anyone can deal with it, it's me. So yeah, we just have to take it day by day, like trading, right? You can't look ahead. You just have to focus on what's in front of you, control your variables as much as possible. And actually, because I am a trader, I think I'm able to maybe grasp with the challenges of the disease maybe better than somebody else. So again, silver lining, right? Thomas Kane says, do you think it was the NHS's fault, or were you on private health? So I do have private health care, but I did not use it because I was like, well, I was told it was just an allergy, right? So I was given fexofenadine, which did F all. It was probably the NHS fault because the first two doctors that I spoke to were very rude. They kept talking over me. They kept trying to tell me, I said, it's probably a reaction to the vaccine. And they were like, that's not a thing. And I said, but it looks like shingles. And they're like, no. So I am a bit angry at the NHS doctors. Maybe I should have gotten myself to the A&E, but A&R, that's a music thing. For those of you who are not in the UK, A&E is basically ER. So you go to the emergency room. We call it accident and emergency. But we were told it was still like lockdowns, partial lockdowns. And they were like, don't go to the emergency room if you're, unless you're imminently dying. And I wasn't. I was just uncomfortable and in pain. But I wasn't dying. And we were just encouraged to stay at home and not actually, go and seek help. Again, there was a whole bunch of stuff happening there. But I probably blame Boris Johnson more than anybody else because he was the one who said, well, if you've had the vaccine in the last 3 months, you're now eligible for a booster. So you have to go get a booster. And I was going to travel because my dad was actually really ill. We just had the puppies as well. So there was a lot of stuff going on. And I knew that I had the prospect of potentially traveling to go see my dying father at that point. So I was like, well, I have to take it. So I might as well take it, right? No, wrong. And my whole life changed. I should do that trend that they're doing on TikTok. Like, she doesn't know it yet, but in the next day she will find herself in absolute agony. All right, so we are underneath the initial balance, and we are a little over time now. So I'm going to keep this running. I'm going to monitor this gamma wall. For now, here's what I'm seeing here. So we are underneath the initial balance. So this little box here, that's the initial balance. So that's the initial balance low. We came up to it. We rejected it. That's kind of a good sign, right? So there is a chance that if there's any increase in volume that we actually smash through this gamma wall. Here is what I want to see. I want to see them, upon touching the gamma wall, I don't want them to do what they did here. I want them smashing through it on the first run. And then maybe they can start fighting, but ultimately if we manage to go below it, I do not want to see any 30-minute time frame reclaim it, okay? If it reclaims it, I'm going to have to exit this position wherever it is. So whatever number that is at that point, I will be fine with that. If we break it, however, and if we do get a retest of the gamma wall and it starts to struggle on a 2-minute chart, I will probably add to this. I might even book this trade, maybe initiate another one if we are too close to the PPI number that we have at 1:30 p.m. my time. So that is the plan, my lovelies. I will be on Lunchbox Trading today with Anne-Marie as well, so do check that out. Check us girls talking data and being a bit random at times. So yeah. Nick G says, I love to watch how the IB held on the 2-minute chart. Great show again today, much appreciated. Yeah. Could it be psychosomatic? No. It was actually proven that ME is not psychosomatic. It's actually biological because your brain rewires itself. It has nothing to do with your state. I'm probably the least depressed person in your life that you will ever meet. I'm very stable. I've never had issues with mental health ever. And it's probably why I can navigate the illness reasonably well. It's not like I didn't go through a whole identity shift. I did. It was pretty sad. But, you adapt and then you just go, well, this is life now. Be more dog. That's what they do. Some dogs, when they lose a leg, they don't go, oh, where's my leg? They just go, all right, well, I've got 3 now. I suppose I'll make this work. And that's kind of how I look at life. Bruno says, do you reduce your stop loss if you add to it? No, but I will do my partial. So that will be like a new trade. You know how I had the partial up at GEX2? That's what I will be doing exactly the same way. So we bleed through it, come up against another area. I will use that to actually say, well, this is now a brand new trade. Like whatever my average is at that point, my new trade, because it's effectively 2 trades, right? One was up there, another one is here. So yeah. How do you calculate gamma levels? Mentor Q. I will write it. I don't calculate them. MentorQ is a company that aggregates very, very complex options data and dumbs them down to like a single line on the chart. Obviously, you have to have understanding of how price can behave around it. But yeah, it's an amazing service. I do think Anne-Marie is going to be with MentorQ as well, she said. So check it all out. Yeah. Alexander S., it looks like you're out of microbiome. I'm not. I got tested. Microbiome is absolutely fine. So that's not the answer either. Don't think that those of us who are sick did not spend an exorbitant amount of research, especially me being me, incredible amount of research and poring over medical diaries and studies to find out glimmers of hope of what it could be. I tried the microbiome reset. I tried taking protein pump inhibitors. I tried taking antihistamine tablets. I tried everything in the book. I've been sick for 3.5 years. Okay, I tried it all. None of it worked. And in fact, bizarrely, minocycline antibiotic worked. It was almost like Lyme disease, but I didn't have Lyme disease. It was negative, right? So it took me 18 months of being on minocycline, 100 milligrams a day, to start getting better and to stop crashing. But anyways, I'm going to finish it here now. Thank you so much for being here with me. I might make a YouTube video on my own channel about the disease. Maybe I can even do a live stream and then we can chat about ME. If you've got friends who have got it, I know that a ton of people are suffering from it. So maybe my experience with it and what helped me. I already did one video back in like 3 years ago. But maybe it's time for another one. So thank you so much for being here. I will see you for Lunchbox Trading. I'm Mark Stoker D. This was the Euro Trade. Have a great rest of your day. See you later.